matter what we're facing in life, there is hope.
Every hour, wondering if you'll make it out. You've been here for as long as you can remember.
There's so much more to life than the troubles we have. I just want people to see me and be willing to never give up.
You're not abandoned. You're not alone. There is a family.
Amen. So, is this on? Good morning. From my side, I just wanted to welcome George. George and I have been friends for a few years. George is from Richmond, and that's where we met, and we worked together in some ministry over there. And he's just been a blessing. This guy's the most humblest guy you've ever met. He's just one of those people that love God, that just want to tell his story of how just God changed him and how God has just brought him through so many things. And so we're really privileged this morning to welcome him. We feel like you're part of the family already. We had a good time last night. In Albany, went out for dinner, and he's like, we hope you're going to come back again soon. So why don't we just give him a big warm welcome to House of Praise.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you guys for being here. What's up? What's going on? Morning. It's great to be here. Tim said it. It was, me and him have been friends for a while, and we've done some stuff together. But I actually haven't seen him since he moved from Richmond to here, and you guys made him cooler. And he was already kind of like halfway there, but I think you guys kind of pushed him, to be the best that he can be in the realm of coolness. But I would just love to worship with you before we kick this off, because we just love that. So if you know this song, please sing along together with me. It's just how he loves. So please sing with me. Love's like a hurricane, I am a tree, bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. All of a sudden, I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how rich your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. Jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane, I am a tree, bending beneath the weight that He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Oh, how He loves. Yeah, and we are His portion, and He is our prize, drawn to redemption by the grace in His eyes. If His grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. Yeah, and heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. And I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about, oh, the way that He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Oh, how He loves. Yeah, He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Oh, how He loves. All right, thank you again. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is George Dennehy. I'm just so thrilled to be here. I'm here with my brother, Tom. He's in the front row, and our friends, the Whitneys, are here too. So go ahead and just welcome them. I'm not gonna lie, I've kind of always just traveled by myself, so I've never really traveled with like my little brother. So I was a little concerned, a little worried when we were gonna do this, and I was like, all right, just be good, be cool. But Tom's been a huge help. He's been kind of like an assistant type. But hey, you know, this morning I'm just so excited to be able to share with you a little bit of music and about my life and kind of what I've been through. And my hope and my prayer is that you are inspired and impacted, and maybe you begin to have a different view or a different perception on your own obstacles and your own challenges, and how everything in your life might be part of God's bigger plan, even though we don't understand it sometimes, right? So, you know, the main idea, like the big thing I want to get in your head, if you don't take anything else away from me being here, just remember this, that God can and wants to use you exactly where you are. And that everything that happens in your life, good and bad, it all happens for a reason. And God's not surprised by anything. God's not surprised by the bad things that happen in your life. So me and Tom are from Richmond. We live in Richmond, Virginia. I'm 23 years old, and I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I love to do that. This is kind of like, but I actually love to swim. You know, I do my best at swimming, and I kind of brag about my swimming because I find that when I'm in the water, right, when I'm swimming in the water and I'm in the deep end, that's kind of where I have my most spiritual moments with God. That's kind of when I'm deepest in prayer, because here I am really deep in the water. If I sink, I sink. So I'm kicking as hard as I can, right? So I'm really praying pretty hardcore. I'm like, Lord, you know, just please keep me afloat. I love you, by the way. I'll do whatever you say. Just keep me afloat right now. But I want to tell you a quick story about this time I was swimming at the beach. So we live in Richmond, and we're about an hour and a half from Virginia Beach. So I'll go there during the summer, you know, because I love to swim and I love the ocean. And one time I was in the ocean and I was swimming around. And I was swimming for a couple of minutes until the riptide came in. And I was pretty deep out in the water. So I was pretty deep out swimming, and all of a sudden the riptide comes in and pushes me underwater. And I was rolling around under the water, completely out of control of what was going on. It was kind of humbling, but also really frightening, because you have no idea what's going to happen, and you know, your eyes are closed unless you want to open them, and salt gets in them, and yeah. But I finally got pushed back out on the shore, and I rolled back up on shore, and I kind of had a moment of, I'm going to try to get this word right, discombobulation. Did I get that right? All right, cool. And, I don't know if you've ever kind of woken up from a nap, like a long nap, and you kind of wake up and you're like, what day is it? You're like, whoa, hold on, where am I? Yeah, you're like, where am I? Like, what year is it? Like you maybe think you overslept or something. Maybe some of you people do that more than others. You nappers out there. I'm a napper, so no shame. But, so I had a moment of complete discombobulation when I sat up from the beach. Like, I sat up for a second, and I was like, whoa, where am I? And I'm like, okay, I don't know where I just was. And I was like, okay, my legs are there. And I'm like, okay, my arms were never there. Kind of really, really out of it at this point. But I kind of sat there and I was like, okay, good. I'm still in one piece, kind of. Missing a couple pieces, but, still there, I guess. And I looked over to my left, and there to my left was like a dad and his little daughter, and she must have been 4 or 5 years old. So, and they were just standing there at the edge of the beach, kind of dipping their toes in the water, and it looked really, really like a sweet moment. But the dad kind of looked over at me, and then the daughter looked over at me, and I was swimming, so I wasn't wearing a shirt or anything, so it was pretty obvious, like, hey, what's up? There's nothing there. There's nothing there. So this little girl looks over at me, and she was really, really adorable, but then she kind of made this weird face, this kind of really confused face. So she kind of looks over and she's like, and then she just says, what's wrong with you? And I sat there and I'm like, this is, kids have no filter. One thing that I want to tell you from growing up being disabled all my life, kids just don't have a filter. I get that question all the time. I get that question, what's wrong with you? Where are your arms? What happened? What did you do? I get this question all the time. And I've learned too that, adults don't have a filter as well. So we don't have filters. We notice what's different, and sometimes that can be a bad thing. But it can also be a good thing, and that's our choice. But anyway, so this girl, she's looking at me, and I just look at her, and I just tell her, when I was your age, I didn't eat my vegetables. And kind of, yeah. I'm not very nice. And I was not lying, because I've been to a church before where they were like, blasphemer! And tried to kick me off, and I'm like, I'm not lying, I really didn't eat my vegetables when I was little. But when I said that, the dad, kind of like looked shocked, and the girl definitely looked shocked, but the girl looked over at her dad, and the dad looked over at her, and he just did this. He was just like, he didn't make any move. So I want to tell you that all my life, I've made up so many stories, because here's the thing, when everybody asks me, when people keep asking me like, hey, where are your arms? What happened to your arms? What did you do? And all I have to say, the only true answer I can really give that's honest is, I was just born like this. This is how I was born. This is how I was created. I was born this way. I was born this way. I was born this way. And the more I say that, the more I realize, like, I am starting to sound a lot like Lady Gaga, just continuously saying, hey, I was born this way. I was born this way. And I'm like, nope, don't want to do that. So I've kind of taken the chance to make up funny stories, because you got to make fun of yourself every once in a while. You got to be light about stuff. You got to laugh. But I want to go into and talk about a little bit about where I come from in the beginning of my life, and kind of how I got over here, and how God was kind of involved in all of that. I believe that every one of our lives is a story. And some people are ashamed of their stories, but I like to tell people, don't be ashamed of your story, because it's who you are. It's made you who you are. God's story for your life has made you who you are, and He's not done. Your story isn't over. And I know there are times when sometimes we feel like they're over, and I know there are times in my life, and I'll get into this, where I really felt like my story was over. But sometimes we don't understand God. We don't understand His ways. We just got to trust that He knows what He's doing. So I was actually born in Romania, and yeah, I'll be honest with you guys. I was born without arms, and I was placed in an orphanage straight from birth, because it just wasn't normal for somebody to be born like me. My biological parents just didn't have what it took to take care of somebody like me, so they put me in an orphanage, just hoping, maybe somebody somewhere else out there would take me in and give me a life and care for me the way that, I should be cared for. So I was in this orphanage for about 3 years, and it was one of those places that, you see online or you see in a video on Orphan Sunday, and it's just like a terrible, rundown, dirty, overcrowded orphanage. It was a really bad place to be. There were way too many babies and not enough nurses. In fact, I think there were 3 or 4 babies to one crib, just that packed. And I like to joke around because I'm like, I kind of bet that my roommates in the orphanage were kind of glad that they had me as a roommate because, less arm space. Stupid. But the same rules apply to like elevators and stuff too. And, I give more space to people. But the worst thing about this orphanage where I lived for these many years is I was seen as an outcast. The nurses in the orphanage, they believed that I was cursed and that I had evil spirits living inside of me, really superstitious and like gypsy stuff going on over there. And they just thought that I was this omen of sorts. So they didn't want to care for me, they didn't want to touch me, they didn't want to love me, they didn't want to hold me or anything. And they just kind of threw me aside. This baby should not have been born anyways. There's nothing good that can come from this. He's a mistake. He's just a curse. We don't want to touch him. We don't want to love him. Nothing. We don't want anything to do with him. And if I were to just end the story there, if I were to just stop right there and just be like, and that was my life, and that's it, goodbye. Well, actually, there's no way because you see me here right now. Never mind. If you were reading a book and that was the end of the story, you would think, okay, well, that baby probably just died right there in the orphanage, and that was the assumption. The doctor who came in to look at all the babies and look at all of us in the orphanage, he saw me and he saw the care that I was in, or the lack of care actually, and he kind of just said, there's no hope for him. There's no hope. A doctor saying there's no hope. We hear that sometimes, right? I don't think that he was the only doctor to ever say that, and I think maybe some of you have heard that from a doctor yourself. There's no hope for you. There's no hope for your loved one. And what? We're supposed to listen to them because they're doctors, right? They know what they're talking about. I'm not bashing any doctor. If there's a doctor in here, I love you, by the way. But you're not better than God. Sorry. Yeah. Anyways, but little did I know that during this whole time in my life, across the ocean over in the state of Connecticut, God was working on a couple's heart to adopt me. My parents were coming home from church one day, and the church service was essentially about, how as believers and as Christians that, technically, I guess, yes, we can come to church every Sunday and, read our Bible at church and do communion and do all that stuff, and we can get by doing that, and, having faith, and we can get by doing that. But, really, why do that? Because God has so much more for us. God has such a plan and such a purpose for our lives and a mission for us that we could never even imagine. And all we got to do is just ask the Lord, what is it? What is it for me? And my parents were really convicted by that because at that point, they had 3 kids of their own, and they were all really little. So they had 3 little kids and lived in a nice little house, it was like a big house actually, and they had like a nice picket fence and like 2 dogs and stuff, and they were living the dream, or what would be the cultural dream of like America and the American dream. They were living it, but they still felt empty. They still felt like they weren't satisfied and fulfilled with their lives, and I think the Holy Spirit really knocked on their hearts. Well, I think he knocked on their hearts that day and just kind of told them, like, I have more for you. So my parents were kind of, talking about it, and my mom was talking to my dad, and she just said, I think we can do more for the kingdom. I think we can do more. And my dad kind of agreed, and what they describe it as, how this went down, they described it as, my dad was kind of thinking, yes, absolutely, let's go volunteer at a homeless shelter, or let's go, care for dogs that don't have homes yet or whatever. And all those are really great things, but my mom had a very different thing in mind. My mom just kind of right there in the car was like, hey, let's adopt a child that nobody else in the world would seemingly want to adopt. And I think that threw my dad off for a loop. And he was like, okay, I guess, fine. If you say so, honey. Yes, honey, yes. You guys, you ever do that? But my mom was serious. My mom was really serious about this. So she began looking around at different catalogs and, I guess, magazines back then, because they're old, so, back then it wasn't like they were on Facebook or anything. So they were like looking at like catalogs and newsletters actually of different adoption agencies, and they were looking at all the children who needed homes, and I guess they just happened to come across my picture. Well, I don't even want to say they just happened to, because we all know it's not random, right? I feel stupid for even saying that. It's not random. It's planned out. It's perfectly planned. And they came across my little picture, and it was this black and white picture, this little baby with no arms, and it just says, baby boy desperately needs a loving family, and then the doctor's notes right under that, and then according to the doctor, this boy will soon die. And then she called my dad into the room, and then he saw it, and he was like, okay, we got to do this. Like, we're supposed to do this. So they came over to Romania, and they did all they needed to do with the paperwork and stuff, and they picked me up for the first time, and I was 3 years old at this point, and I weighed 9 pounds. Just to give you an idea of kind of the situation I was in, it was not good at all. It looked hopeless. And then they adopted me, and I grew up in their family, and I want to talk a little bit more about my family, because I'm here with my brother Tom, but I have a couple of more siblings, not just Tom. So after my parents adopted me, they adopted 9 more children from 6 other countries. Thank you. I'll be sure to let them know that you guys love that. But, I just want to tell you real quick, if my parents were here, and if it was my dad speaking instead of me, he would not have wanted to accept that applause. Because a lot of people will say, like, oh, your parents are so special. Your parents are so amazing. And I'm telling you, they're really not. I'm just kidding, they are. But not in the sense that so many people say it. Because my parents would just be like, we're just obedient to what God has called us to do. We're just people. We're just normal people. We don't know what we're doing. We don't have all the answers. We're just being obedient to what God has called us to do. But growing up in my family, my parents kind of always instilled in all of us, in me and my brother James, who also has no arms, and we have a sister who has no arms or legs. So, my parents were always so supportive and encouraging for all of us, and kind of always telling us that we can, do anything, that anything is possible because God is on our side. And that, I would kind of get in the mindset of, can you help me with this? Like, can you help me get a drink of water? Or can you do this? Or can you help me get some lunch? And I think back in the day, I thought my parents were being mean when they said, no, do it yourself. But really, they were setting me up to be as independent as possible. So I'll just tell you that, I've learned just kind of over the course of my life by being forced to learn how to do everything that everyone else does just my own way. I drive a car with my feet. I use one foot on the wheel and one foot down on the gas and brake, and I cause accidents because people are always looking at me and freaking out. I'm just kidding. I've never caused an accident. But it is funny because a lot of people do look at me and kind of like do like this double take thing. And my license plate says armless guy, so it's like, hey, a little like, don't be shocked when you see me, when you pull up next to me. You know what you're getting into. But I've just learned to do everything. But as a little kid, as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, up to 10, life was just very secluded and very small. I was homeschooled for a couple of years, and I went to a little private school for a couple of years, and all my friends were friends I grew up in church with. So, when I was a little kid, I never felt really different, right? Because my family was so different, my church was so different, my school, I had like 2 other classmates, and that was it. Like, I never felt different, but in 2006, my parents kind of told us that we were going to be moving to Richmond, Virginia, from Connecticut, where we lived at the time. And I would go to a public middle school for the first time, and there's going to be like 1,000 kids in the school, and that threw me off, because I was like, wait, you can fit that many kids into one school, and everyone's good, like, everyone stays alive each day? And, I try my best to be optimistic about everything, and I try to be just positive about whatever. So when they told us that, I was bummed out big time, because we were moving. Like, that's never a good thing to hear when you're a 12-year-old kid. But I was thinking, like, okay, well, it's a public school, right? So what do I have to do to get friends? Like, open up a water bottle with my feet? I'm like, ta-da, magic, and they're all like my friends. And I had really low expectations about kids in public school. Yeah. But I learned pretty quickly that, especially in middle school and then high school too, that when you're different in any kind of way, you're treated different. And I don't know, I didn't expect that. Like, I didn't think that kids treated each other like this. So it really threw me off when I went to school and I got on the bus for the first time and kids were kind of starting to laugh and whisper and, like, you know, there'd be one kid up against the window and then I'd like, okay, I'm like, there's a seat and I'll sit there. But then he kind of like shifts over to this other seat and I'm like all the way in the back. And in high school, back of the bus is cool, not in middle school. Just clear that up. So the back of the bus in middle school, that's where all the losers go. That's where all the loners go. And I was kind of forced right then and there to be a loner. I would sit at lunch and I would be eating my lunch, and you know, I eat with my feet. That's just what I do. But kids would walk by and kind of like make like gross sounds or like ew, you know, like all that stuff, and it would make me so ashamed of being who I was just born as that I stopped eating lunch at school because I didn't want to deal with that. It hurt. You know, kids kept calling me names. Kids would, you know, just be so cruel to me and push me in the hallways. And, you know, when I get pushed or when I, like, trip on something, there's no hope for me. That's the one hopeless situation where I'm like, God hasn't saved me from a fall yet. It'd be cool if he did, like if I just start falling and some angel comes over and like picks me back up. But no, that hasn't happened yet. Every time I fall, I just go straight down. There's no ghost of this tower falling down. How it was, what it was like being bullied and how that affected me and how that brought me to a really dark place in my life. Because it did. It brought me to a really low point in my life and who I thought I was. And what I say a lot of times is more so than being called names and more so than being made fun of, you know, that you eventually become kind of numb to that kind of stuff, but what you never become numb to is just being completely alone. Being completely isolated from everyone else. And I just think it's so crazy how we can be in a room full of people and still feel so alone, especially kids in school. You see, the enemy got a really strong hold on my heart. And the Bible is pretty clear about what the enemy does and how he does it. You see, I just believe that's step one. That's step one of him taking over our hearts, is isolating us, is making us feel alone. And I think that, you know, the devil's number one goal in his existence is to just make us feel insignificant. He wants to make us feel like we can't be used by God. He wants us to make us feel like we're not worth anything, that we're not good enough, that we're not talented enough or smart enough or pretty enough or whatever it is. I think that's what he just desperately tries to do in our lives. And he got a really strong hold on me. I got really depressed and angry and suicidal, and I wanted nothing more than just to just be done with everything, because I got to the point, and I think there's a lot of more students that are at this point but don't ever speak up about it. And I never did. I mean, why would you tell your parents about what you're going through at school only for them to tell the principal, and then the principal to tell the bully's parents, and then the bullies to find out, and then you know what happens next. You get pushed in the locker, and the locker's too tight for you to open it. You know, I got to a point where every time I saw myself in the mirror, I just questioned why. And I don't know if you've ever been in a point in your life or a place in your life when you're going through something that is so difficult, so impossible, and you just find yourself asking the question, how could you do this to me? Why me? I was this 15-year-old kid at this point, and I was asking God, I'm like, God, how is it that you do this to people? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why does this have to happen to me? The biggest question I had at this point, which people ask me this all the time, is how could such a loving God that you hear about all the time in church, like how could such a loving God do this to me? How could he just decide that I'm going to be born without arms? How can he just decide that you're going to go through what you're going to go through? How does that work? And I doubted, and I was ashamed, and I hated him, and I scolded him, and I would even do this thing. I don't know if you've ever done this, right? I don't know if you've ever done this thing where you kind of try to play God. You try to God. I don't know if that made any sense. But here's the example. I would be talking, and I don't want to say praying. I don't know if it's praying if you're angry. I don't know how that works, but maybe it is. But anyways, I guess communicating with God is praying. So yes, I was praying to God, and I would just say like, hey, you know what? Here's an idea. If you're so mighty, and if you're so loving, and if you're so great, then just make me wake up tomorrow with arms. Because you could do that, right? Like you could make me wake up tomorrow, and my problems would be gone. And then if you did that, and then I would know that you're real. Then I would know that you are for me, that you do answer prayers. Then I would know. And that never really happened unless it did. And then that day I forgot to eat my vegetables. And here I am back at square one. No, that never happened. But that's something that we sometimes do, right? Like, I don't know, maybe not to that degree, but sometimes, even today, I'll just be like, Lord, if you could just help me with this, then I'll be good. Like, if you could just help me here, then I'll be set. Then I'll be happy. If you could just give me this, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be happy. There is no physical thing. There is no physical thing that you could ever get that will ever give you true joy, peace, and happiness. It's just not going to happen. And I realize that now. I look back and I'm like, you know what? What if God did make me wake up with arms one day? You know, like how crazy awesome would that be? Like that would have been amazing. That would have been seriously miraculous. But then I was like, well, how long then? How long until I got bored of that? And how long until I forget that, what he did? You know, the Bible is kind of gives that example of Israel and how many times God has saved them and rescued them, and then they just kind of go back in their old ways and they forget, and they're like, oh, rescue us again, rescue us again, rescue us again. Because that's the thing. Sometimes we treat God as this genie that will just give us what we want and we'll be happy, but that's never, ever going to happen. There's a passage in the Bible that completely shifted my perception on my situation, and I'm wondering if it can change your perception too. I don't really have a Bible in front of me, but I'm going to paraphrase it the best I can, but if I get anything wrong, pastors, kick me off stage, because I don't want to do that. I don't want to get the Bible wrong. But anyways, basically in John chapter 9, the disciples and Jesus are walking down this road. And they see this blind man on the side of the road, and the disciples kind of see him, and it throws them off, right? Because he's disabled. He's different. So they're like, whoa. And then they're kind of adults with no filters, and they kind of look at Jesus, and they're like, whoa, Jesus. I'm really paraphrasing, by the way. This is like new age, yeah. They're like, Jesus, why is this man born blind? What did he do wrong? Like, who sinned? Did he do something bad, or did his parents do something bad for him to be born like this? Like, whoa, what happened here? And I'm not going to lie to you, sometimes I had these kind of thoughts where I maybe thought like, well, maybe my birth parents were really bad people. And maybe this is like my punishment or their punishment for their son to be born without arms. And you have a lot of crazy thoughts when you're depressed. That's all I'm going to say. You have a lot of crazy thoughts. All lies, but they're still thoughts. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. And Jesus answers them, and it doesn't say this in the passage, but I kind of picture Jesus kind of looking at the floor and like shaking his head a little bit, because he's like, you guys still don't really get how I work. Because he answers them and he's like, okay, it wasn't anybody's sin or any accident or any mistake or any bad thing that happened for this man to be born blind, but this man was born blind so that God could work through him, so that the works of God could be seen through him in a mighty way. And for some reason, when I read that at this point in my life as a freshman in high school, when I read that, it completely changed my whole entire perception of my own life. I started wondering like, well, Jesus says right here that this blind man can be used by God, so maybe I could be used by God too. Maybe there's a reason why I was born like this. Maybe there's a reason why I'm going through this. Maybe this disability isn't really much of a disability. You see, the truth is that we all go through trials, and we all go through pain, and we all face things that seem impossible. And it's easy to think like, oh, God is making me go through this. God is doing this to me. But, we all live in this world, right? Like, we all live here, right now, on planet Earth. And let's be honest, we live in a sinful world. And just because we may be believers, and maybe you're not, I don't know where you are in your journey, in your story, but the truth is that this is a very broken world. We can agree on that, I think. This is a very, very broken world. And it doesn't matter who you are, we're not immune to that. We're not immune to the effects of sin. And I think that, in a way, we experience that. We experience brokenness. We experience pain and sin, but we get to look forward to a day when that is no more. Because that's the day that this is all leading up to. And if we keep the faith, if we remember what Jesus has done, do it again. A lot of times we feel like that we're not good enough, that we're not capable enough to be used by God, that we're not, whatever it is, enough. But I think when we start having those kind of thoughts, we completely lose the point that it's not about who we are or how good we are. It's not about that at all. It's all about what Jesus has already done. Like, that is already done. Like, Jesus has already died for us. He already took all of our sin and all of our brokenness and all of our handicaps and all our disabilities. He already took all that on him. And he rose again and completely changed everything. So when you start to think about, like, I'm just not good enough, or I'm not a good enough person to come to church, that's nonsense. Jesus doesn't want perfect people in church. There are no perfect people. Like, if you think you're not good enough, if you think that you're not good enough, you're right. And I don't want that to sound depressing, but you're right. You're not good enough. I'm not good enough. We're not good enough. But I'm just so thankful, and it gets me so excited and so pumped that we serve a God that is. And that we serve a God and a Lord who adopts us into his family. If you are a believer in here this morning, then you're adopted too, not just me. God adopts us into his family, into his home, and he gives us a life and a purpose and a reason to be here. Because I think all of us, that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for hope in this hopeless world. We're looking for purpose in this random world that we sometimes think is so out of order. We're looking for a plan. And I would encourage you, no matter where you are, to maybe look in a different direction than where you've been looking. You can search for all these answers wherever you want. But I'm telling you, your life will change if you just ask the Lord, show me. Show me what all this is about. Show me what you are about. Show me who I am. Because sometimes I don't know. I want to play a song that I ended, and it's called Not a Baby. And I wrote this song kind of as a response to adoption and what it means to be adopted into the family I am in now, and also God's family with brothers and sisters. Because at one point in my life, well, 2 points in my life actually, I was an orphan. I was an orphan in Romania, and I was an orphan in school. I was an orphan in my bedroom. I was an orphan in my closet where I would cry and be so alone. Maybe you're here this morning because you just saw that some guy was playing guitar with his feet in town, and you're like, I got to see this. I don't know. Honestly, if that's the reason you're here, then that's awesome. But that's not why I'm here. I'm not here because I play guitar with my feet. That doesn't mean anything. That's just a little magical tactic so I can get you here. This is all about who Jesus is and what he can do in your life and what he's done in my life. So maybe you've come here and maybe you feel like an orphan. Maybe you kind of feel like no matter what you do, no matter what you say, you're just an outcast. Maybe you feel so alone and so just lost in this world. I don't know, I wrote this song because I finally understand. I finally understand what it means to be adopted into God's family, what it means when we call him Abba, Father, that we can just call on him and just call him and say, Abba, Father. It's a reminder to me that God is not far from our problems, that God is not far from our circumstances, and that he's not smaller than what we go through, that he's so much bigger than anything we could ever face. So this is called Not Abandoned.
Every day, every hour, wondering if you'll make it out. You've been here for as long as you can remember, trapped inside this hollow shell. You're not abandoned. You're not alone. There is a family that wants to make you their own. You're gonna find out that on this broken road there is a pathway that's gonna lead you home, lead you home. You were left in a wasteland with a voice yet to be heard. 10 years later, you're still fighting for a chance just to be loved. You're not abandoned. You're not alone. There is a family that wants to make you their own. You're gonna find out that on this broken road there is a pathway that's gonna lead you home, lead you home, lead you home. You're not abandoned. You're not alone. There is a Savior. He wants to make you his own. You're gonna find out that on this broken road there is a pathway that's gonna lead you home. You're not abandoned. You're not abandoned. You're not abandoned. Yeah, you're not abandoned. You're not abandoned.
Well, thank you guys again so much for being here and for listening to me. And I really do hope that something I may have said or sung, I don't know, I just hope that God spoke to you in some way. And, as we go into this response time, I just want to encourage you to really be in prayer and just ask the Lord yourself, what is it? What is it in my life that you want to show me, and what do you want to do through me? And what are your disabilities? What are your handicaps? What's been holding you back?